You're listening to Simple Health Radio, the podcast about recognizing medical emergencies and promoting wellness. Your host is Dr. Emron, an experienced ER physician who has treated thousands of people just like you. Information on the show is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always talk to your doctor or go to the nearest emergency room with any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Simple Health Radio. Two of our online friends, Val and Cord, from the General Conversation podcast, are part of our online community. They have a unique format for their podcast. They sent in a question about having a vegetarian diet and the importance of certain vitamins and minerals. Their website is anchor.fm/VANDC. Now let's have a listen to their question.
Hi, this is Val.
And this is Cord.
From the General Conversation podcast. You can stream us on Anchor, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you would like to have your favorite streaming podcast. My question is, lately I've been doing the vegetarian diet. So I wanted to know, is there a way I could get extra energy and protein from certain foods? And what foods would you recommend? Also, does not eating meat affect a person's iron level in a bad way?
So first, let me thank Val and Cord for sending in a great question. So when we talk about a vegetarian diet, there are actually several details that overlap and some important differences. There's actually a spectrum of people who consider themselves to be vegetarian. For example, there may be some people who eat small amounts of meat on a regular basis, but they're trying to move away from that. Some of those people are called semi-vegetarians or flexitarians. Then there are other vegetarians who will avoid eggs because they come from animals, but they're still allowed to consume milk, cheese, or yogurt. And then there are others who exclude all meat and all chicken products, but they allow fish. So those people are called pescatarians. And then there are those who have a very strict interpretation of what it means to be vegetarian. They don't eat any meat, poultry, fish, eggs, or dairy products. They don't even allow the consumption of any substances that may come from those types of sources. And those people we consider vegan. So as a doctor, I always like to explain that there's a spectrum of vegetarian diets. So you have to know exactly where you fall on that spectrum, and then we can better guide what the best options are for you. Now, furthermore, we have to break down the categories of people who may be vegetarian and what their health requirements are going to be. So if we have a healthy adult male, for example, we can pretty much estimate what his calorie requirements, protein requirements, and vitamin requirements are going to be. From 1 month to another, it's going to be pretty similar, very stable, and over a few months or even a year, there's going to be minimal variation. There's basically no major harm that's going to come to that adult healthy male. However, if you add in diabetes, so if you have a diabetic adult male, we know that even if they follow the vegetarian diet, there's a chance that they may eat too many carbohydrates or other simple sugars, and that will raise their blood glucose. So those people have to be more selective with what they eat. Even if it's only fruits and vegetables and grains, some people can actually have too much of one, which will increase their blood sugar and cause complications with their diabetes. Now, with a healthy adult female, again, we have an expectation of what they need, but if that female becomes pregnant or is breastfeeding, we automatically know that the calorie requirements are going to increase, the nutritional requirements are different, and the vitamin deficiencies are even more important to pick up, identify, and correct as soon as possible. Otherwise, if it goes untreated, that will harm not just the mother, but also the child. So in this situation, what I commonly do is break down the specific vitamin deficiencies. So whatever I see in the ER or in the clinic, I try to be very clear. This is what we're testing for, this is what we need to do, and this is why we need to do that. And that helps the patient and the doctor to avoid bad outcomes. Now, the first thing that Val mentioned was protein. The good news with protein is that if you're vegetarian, regardless of what type you are, it's unlikely you're going to have a major protein deficiency. It's easy to supplement protein through a variety of fruits and vegetables and grains. So in the United States, it's unlikely that you're going to have a protein issue as long as you're just eating what's appropriate and you're having your fill. If you don't feel too fatigued with that, I think you're going to be just fine. Now, we have to compare that with vitamin B12 deficiency, which is actually very common. So vitamin B12 actually comes from animal products. Specifically, it comes from dairy, meat, and eggs. Most plant-based diets, even with people who are vegetarian, are actually supplemented or fortified with B12 because it's such an important vitamin. If people have very strict vegan interpretations, they may exclude those sources, meaning they don't get them at all, because the B12 comes from animal sources. Now, the vitamin B12 deficiency causes a very unique type of anemia. So anemia means a lack of healthy red blood cells. When a B12 deficiency occurs, the red blood cells decrease in number, but they increase in size. So this causes the blood flow in the human body to circulate very inefficiently. So they're anemic, meaning they don't have enough red blood cells, but the cells that they do have are very big. And so those people are actually very fatigued, and they may have symptoms like palpitations, where their heart is racing all the time. So vitamin B12 deficiencies must be corrected, either with injections or with oral supplements. Now, once people have enough vitamin B12, it actually corrects the anemia, and they'll be good for a while, probably several months. But then again, if they relapse or if they don't get enough B12, they have to get another injection or take more oral B12 supplements. If B12 deficiency is not corrected, it can actually cause neurologic problems. So that affects the nerves in our fingers and toes, and some people can have permanent damage if they're not careful. Now, second thing we need to talk about is iron, as Val already mentioned. So iron is necessary for red blood cells. In medical terms, we call it hemoglobin, and that's a value we can measure very easily. Heme means iron. Globin is a type of protein. So people who are deficient in iron will have a low hemoglobin, which by definition is anemia. So whereas the B12 deficiency makes big blood cells, iron deficiency makes very small blood cells. So they're anemic, they've got less red blood cells to begin with. Now they have an iron deficiency, those few cells they have are even smaller. When those people come to the ER with a severe iron deficiency, they look very pale. They look very weak, and they look like they haven't slept in several weeks. Their eyes are sunken in. They look very gaunt. It's hard for them to go up a flight of stairs, and they can't play sports. They just feel that bad. So with women, we have to remember that with each menstrual cycle, they're going to lose some iron naturally every single month. So over time, losing iron just through those methods has to be replaced. So even in women who are vegetarian and they eat a very rich diet with iron, such as spinach, green leafy vegetables, kale, and so on, they may still need iron supplementation. Now, women also lose iron when they're pregnant because their baby steals some of the iron stores. So for 9 months, a healthy pregnant woman is losing iron. And then on top of that, at the time of delivery, she's going to lose more blood, which further depletes the iron. And then on top of that, if she's breastfeeding, which is a great thing to do, she's going to need even more iron. So that's kind of a triple threat, unfortunately. So she loses iron during the pregnancy, she loses iron at the time of delivery, she loses iron when she's breastfeeding, and she loses iron every month just through the menstrual cycle. So that's why we always monitor the iron in otherwise healthy people, but especially in those who are vegetarian. Now, the good news is that you can supplement the iron with tablets, capsules, or liquids. Untreated iron deficiency anemia results in very low hemoglobin values. So if you don't take care of it properly and you let it go for months or years, oftentimes those people end up in my ER and they have to be transfused or they have to be hospitalized because they're simply too weak. Now, the side effects with iron supplementation is constipation. So that's why some people say, I just don't want the iron pills because whenever I take them, it makes my intestine feel so bad, I feel constipated. And that is true, but there are ways to manage that. So I always recommend that you talk to your doctor if you need to be on iron supplementation of what to do to avoid the side effects. Now, the next thing we'll talk about is the omega-3 fatty acids. So when we talk about omega-3, we're really talking about the heart, cholesterol, and the blood circulation. Typically, fatty acids are going to be found in fish, especially fish oil, and then also eggs from poultry. So these actually help the blood to circulate better, and it improves the arteries and the veins by reducing cholesterol plaque and buildup. So fatty acids are similar to a very light oil that you might put inside of a machine. It just helps everything move and slide back and forth more easily. Now, it is true that plants have omega-3 fatty acids. The problem is that most people can't absorb it or metabolize it efficiently. So you have to eat a large amount of fatty acids from plant-based sources, and it takes a while for that to build up. So in these cases, again, we recommend that you supplement it. So just be sure that whatever foods you're eating are fortified with fatty acids. And if not, then consider getting them in a capsule or a tablet form from a vegetarian source. A low amount of fatty acids, however, it can cause heart attacks, strokes, and blood clots. Now, the last thing we'll talk about is iodine. So iodine is a very necessary nutrient. It's needed by the thyroid hormone to function properly. The thyroid lives in the front part of your throat, and the thyroid has at least 200 different functions in the human body. These range from food metabolism, regulating your sleep cycle, controlling your heart rate, and even managing your temperature of the body. So the thyroid needs iodine to convert the hormone into an active form. So we call it T3 or T4. Now, people who are strict vegans, they don't get enough iodine, and they run the risk of developing a goiter. So a goiter is a very large swelling of the thyroid in the front of the throat. It's interesting that there are actually certain foods that may cause goiters, including things like soybeans and sweet potatoes. We're not quite sure why that happens, but it is known to occur. So an easy way to avoid the iodine deficiency is just to use iodized salt. And in the United States, that's easily available. So whenever you buy salt, if you're vegetarian, just be sure it's iodized, and that'll make sure that your thyroid is functioning well, and it helps to regulate the hormones that go with it. So again, just to summarize what we talked about already, people who are vegetarian, we need to identify where they fall on the spectrum. Do they eat any meat? Do they exclude all forms of dairy and eggs? And are they supplementing their foods with any other nutrients? Then we need those people to talk to their doctor about vitamin B12, iron, omega-3 fatty acids, and iodine. So a vitamin B12 deficiency will cause anemia with very big blood cells. Iron deficiency anemia is going to have very small blood cells. The omega-3 fatty acids help your blood circulation and control your cholesterol. And then iodine is necessary for your thyroid to function properly. So as long as you can manage your dietary restrictions with simple supplements, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to maintain a healthy body for many years to come. And again, I want to thank Val and Cord from the General Conversation podcast for sending in this excellent question about nutrients and vegetarian diets. You can listen to their podcast on anchor.fm/VANDC. Now, I hope that you consider sharing this episode with your friends and family. I'll have show notes up on our website, simplehealthradio.com, where you can read some of the information on the blog and follow some additional references. If you have any questions that you've been thinking about, record them and send them to me via social media. I'll be happy to include them on one of our future episodes.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Visit simplehealthradio.com to read the blog, follow links mentioned on this episode, and easily share content with your family and friends. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and the 3 and Out Radio Network. Be sure to connect with Dr. Emron on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Tumblr to send us your questions and ideas.